over the head of Jenks. Uribe charges, throws, out! And the White Sox have won the World Series.
It's time for the Chicago White Sox postgame show. Got something to say? Call 855-908-5668.
Well, good morning, Chicago, and you are still alive. The Chicago White Sox dreams of a pennant and beyond remain here on October 11th, 2021, as it was a do-or-die Game 3 of this ALDS, and the Chicago White Sox came out victorious 12-6. We're here on the air, not broadcasting a football game like some of our broadcast competitors in the city of Chicago, so go ahead and get in on the phone lines here, get your reaction going at 855-908-5668. I am James Flippin here on The Contender. This is our Chicago White Sox post-game show. And for the next half hour or so, we will recap the game tonight. We'll get our reaction here, and we'll get your reaction as well as we go to the phones at 855-908-5668. So, look, a huge win for the White Sox, obviously. They keep their season going. The crowd was absolutely tremendous, especially early on at Bank Rate Ballpark there on the south side of Chicago. Look, the White Sox, they scored first. They couldn't hold that lead. Dylan Cease, for as good as he looked early on, and I mean, he did. You watch that first inning where Dylan Cease is out there on the mound with the crowd going and the blackout crowd and the lights are flashing and all this kind of stuff. He's out there popping 100 miles per hour. You're thinking, all right, Dylan Cease, was kind of up in the air as to who was going to get this start here in Game 3. He went out there and absolutely poured gasoline on the first inning. But, maybe kind of spent some of that energy, spent some of that adrenaline, if you will, in that first inning and couldn't hold it there. But look, the White Sox offense rallied. They refused to say die. That was the story of the game today. That was the story of really what was a season-saving game, a opportunity to continue on in Game 4, still at home, and possibly push this out to a Game 5. Yasmani Grandal with the hit that really got it going. It was a 2-run opposite field homer that kind of gave life back to the stadium tonight and gave hope again to that Chicago White Sox season, because with all that's happened in Game 1 and Game 2, with the losing streak for Tony La Russa in the playoffs for the White Sox, if you believe in that sort of a thing, going back to the 80s, the pressure that this team may have sort of been feeling, maybe internally, but certainly externally, to show that they can win as opposed to just being a good regular season team, it was all there. And it was all answered in a huge way tonight. And I think that being back home in front of the Chicago crowd, obviously, we know that the White Sox, one of the best home teams in the American League this year. So it really has to make you feel good as a White Sox fan that, if nothing else, this particular game showed you, yes, this team can win in the postseason. Yes, this is not a situation where this team is just going to roll over, refuse to kind of get where the chips are down and fight and claw and get back in this series, because they are now. You get to tomorrow. Carlos Rodon, granted, he's had the arm fatigue, the soreness, all that kind of stuff. The season goes to him now. And with all of his upside and all the special moments that he's had this year, that makes a lot of sense. Phone lines open, 855-908-5668. This is The Contender. I am James Flippin. This is our Chicago White Sox Game 3 postgame of this ALDS matchup between Houston and Chicago. We're on The Contender, and The Contender, you can find us on Twitter. That's The Contender with a K. You can also download our app for free in the App Store and Google Play and get always commercial-free content like I said, this was a night that you say to yourself, your team fought, rallied, refused to give up. Kopech was able to come in, stop the bleeding. Cease had really started to struggle there in that early part of the game, and you just needed to find a way to stop the bleeding and get this offense back into it. Kopech was able to do that. The fact that he was rested going into tonight, the fact that he was able to, give you a little bit of length. Look, Kopech had his struggles. He was certainly not absolutely dominant or locked down when you did finally bring him into the game here, but he did what he had to do. And he got some key outs at key moments that really kind of, again, you talk about the momentum of the game and trying to stem some of that flow. Kopech gave them an option. He gave them an opportunity to get back in this. And then, of course, you get to the later part of the game. The first time the game had any sort of like sanity, that things kind of finally got calmed down from a pitching matchup. Like really, truly, I think it was the first 1, 2, 3 inning since the first inning when Ryan Tepera finally got into the game. Of course, a guy who, trade deadline was brought over from the Cubs. He brought some sanity to the game in those middle goings. But again, this wasn't a Tony La Russa game or a bad call game. Of course, there's some controversy on the Yasmani Grandal play in the 4th inning, which was crazy. That whole frame was crazy. We can talk about that as we get going. And, certainly not too many people listening to this particular post-game show are going to say, oh, Grandal was clearly out of the baseline. And what was he doing running on the grass like that? And, oh, you can establish any old baseline that you want. Most White Sox fans are not thinking about that play right now. And when you look at the final score and it's 12-6, it's hard to really drill in on any, one particular play and say that was kind of the turning point. But again, Yasmani Grandal, the fact that he hit that 2-run homer when he did, getting the White Sox on the board, keeping the game within reach, making it 5-3 at that point. And then Grandal later on the ground ball, kind of moving into the path of Yuli Gurriel's throw home. Was it out of the baseline, not allowed, whatever? Dusty Baker clearly wasn't too happy about it, but we're not going to spend too much time worrying about it. But the first 4 innings of this game were unreal. I mean, crazy. You're settling in Sunday night. The game starts late. You're thinking to yourself, yeah, the crowd's hopping, but we know the way these baseball games tend to go. The power arms, the lots of strikeouts, getting later in the year here. The nights are kind of colder, tough to get the ball up into the air. And, we knew that prior to this game and even through towards the back end of the game, the White Sox just weren't hitting for extra bases. Not finding a lot of gaps, not hitting the ball over the wall. But 2 really big extra base hits tonight for the White Sox. We talked about the Grandal homer. The other one, obviously, that jumps out at you. And just what a huge game he had in general is Yuri Garcia, the utility player extraordinaire for the White Sox this year, who got the start and hit that absolute rocket of a 3-run homer to center, giving the White Sox the big, lead and a lead that they would not relinquish. I should say the game was tied again after that point. The Astros came right back to tie it, but it basically was kind of swung in the White Sox favor at that point. But the first 4 innings of this game were just crazy. Unlike baseball games you've seen, and it took forever too. I mean, you looked up at the clock, here on the production side here at the studio, I'm messaging with Rob Dawson and I'm saying, geez, it's 9:45. This game's not even half over. So the game took a while. Obviously a lot of pitches thrown. Neither pitcher was incredibly sharp. Garcia for the Astros came out looking really good and kind of was locating. Then, of course, you had Wainwright and Przinsky on the broadcast kind of digging in and saying, uh-oh, he's locating his breaking ball now. This is going to be tough sledding for the White Sox. And then, boom, it was right around then when the White Sox kind of started to really hang it on the Astros. But this was a game that took a long time. You felt like the worm had started to turn and that the White Sox had gotten the momentum. Now you just have to see them carry it over to tomorrow. Now you're talking about an opportunity to really grab this series and take it back and just make this a magical moment for the Chicago White Sox. And, don't look now. Obviously, if you're a Chicago White Sox fan, you can't. It's not the kind of thing that you're even allowing yourself to dream. You're trying to go day by day. But, that Red Sox-Rays series, that's shaping up to be a dogfight. So you hope that both of those teams can kind of beat up on each other, and then whoever comes out of that alive. Crazier things have happened. Down 2 games in the DS. Crazier things have happened, that's for sure. 855-908-5668. 855-908-5668. Phone lines are open, and you can join us here on the Contender Postgame Show. And download the Contender app. That's the Contender with a K. We've got Chicago content all the time. Plenty of White Sox talk, Bulls, Bears, especially as we roll along football season and get into the early part of basketball season. You'll want to be here on the Contender app and joining us for all of our coverage. But, certainly as we roll along on the playoffs with the White Sox, we'll have plenty of pregame, postgame, reaction, guests, content, it. So download the Contender app. That's the Contender with a K. And we're taking your phone calls as well here tonight. 855-908-5668. So let's go through the game a little bit. Like I said, Dylan Cease came out tonight just absolutely throwing gas. Hit 100 on the gun a couple of times. The stadium was loud, intense, a lot of energy, great energy. You can tell that the White Sox fans are hungry, that they love this team, that this is an opportunity for them to really enjoy that kind of special bond that you have with each other as a fan and with that team. And, so many of these players are still young and kind of finding themselves. And to the extent that you've got veterans mixed in, they just seem to have meshed really well. It's funny to think back on the early part of the year and say, is this a situation where Tony La Russa is not going to be the right guy? And of course, there were certain moments throughout the season where you didn't know. There were some tests. There was the whole, old school versus new school thing. But, right now, you got to just say to yourself, this was a great night for the White Sox. This was an opportunity for the fans to kind of really let it all out, show their appreciation. The energy was great. Cease was kind of seemingly feeding off a lot of that. And then you get to the bottom of the first, Tim Anderson, who had a great night, had a great at-bat to start off the game. Went full against Garcia, singled. The tone was there early. I mean, I felt like, okay, watching the White Sox game here, it was like, you know what? As bad as it is to be down 2 games, you drop both games in Houston, all that kind of stuff, this is kind of shaping up great so far for the White Sox in the first inning. Get the early lead, opportunity to be up on the board first, and then in the second inning, right after the White Sox score the run, Cease walks the first 2 batters. Brutal. Just brutal. I mean, any time you want to focus on any kind of cliche baseball old adage, falling back on certain things, whatever you want to say, it's fine. But, you can't walk batters in baseball, especially not leadoff batters. It's one of those things, whether it's the fact that your defense is getting kind of lulled to sleep here, or, your pitcher is using bullets and getting frustrated, missed calls maybe, or calls they felt should have been strikes. There's a mental aspect to it. So anytime you're walking batters, especially after your team just gave the lead, can't have it. Just brutal. And, it's frustrating for a guy like Cease, right? Because he took such big steps with his control this year. Last year, we know, had a lot of issues locating his pitches and didn't even get a start against the Athletics in the playoffs. And, that's a big opportunity for him. Season on the line, win or go home, going back home to the home crowd. And it wasn't Carlos Rodon who got the ball in game 3. It was Dylan Cease. And it was a big year for him. And, it's unfortunate that he, couldn't get it done tonight. But at the same time, again, silver linings to the extent that you want to try to find that. He only threw 44 pitches tonight, inning and 2/3. You got to figure that he's got a lot left in the tank potentially for this series. And I have no idea, going forward here, how La Russa is going to try to navigate the pitching staff, except for the fact that we know Rodon goes tomorrow for as long as he can. But it's going to be all hands on deck. Rest of the division series for the White Sox, they're all elimination games. You win 2 more, you go on to the championship series. But Cease, walks those 2 batters, and then Kyle Tucker comes up looking like an absolute stud right now for the Astros, by the way. Was a first-round pick for them 6 years ago. And Cease, finally trying to find his location, serves up a meat fastball to Tucker. He just absolutely rips it into the gap. And, again, Cease, you got to say, like Rodon, he's into uncharted territory when it comes to innings pitched. 165 innings plus for Cease this year. So, you do wonder with all these guys, really, and it's kind of almost across Major League Baseball, what's going to happen with all these guys that have all these innings on their arm after the abbreviated 2020 season. You're talking about bumping out by, like 100 innings with some of these guys. Pretty tough. Pretty tough. So Michael Kopech gets the call. He comes in, relieves Cease. La Russa had seen enough. At this point, it was kind of like, the game was threatening to somewhat get away from the White Sox with the Astros up 3-1 in the second inning. So you bring in Kopech. He's able to slow things down and stop the bleeding. That was a big moment in this game. Because, even though Kopech was not at his absolute best and, allowed the Astros to tack on the 2 runs the next inning, for him to stop the bleeding there in that second inning when things kind of really felt like they were kind of getting out of control, that was a big moment. And of course, with those 2 runs that we just alluded to, again, Kyle Tucker, just crushing the White Sox right now. He'd laced it into the gap on the double that we mentioned, and then he crushed it oppo for the home run against Kopech. And, the one, I can't remember who it was in the booth on the TV, the one guy saying, I didn't think he got that. I think maybe it was Przynski who said, I knew he did. The one thing about that pitch for Tucker was he got it on the good part of the bat. So, yeah, he wasn't necessarily, it didn't look like he was like really full extension on his arms in terms of driving the ball the other way. But he got it right on the fat part of the bat, and he got a good swing on it. Up into the air, over the fence, 2 runs back on the board. That was where you started to feel like, geez, this is going to really be an uphill battle for the White Sox being down at this point 5-1. But wouldn't you know it, come back the next inning, never say die. The White Sox pushed the issue all night here with this, and it was a changeup up in the zone, out and up, that Grandal took the other way with a huge, huge opposite field homer. I mean, that was a moment where watching the game, right? 5-1, runner on, but the one out. I think maybe Jose Abreu had just struck out or something like that. And you said to yourself, man, this is just really starting to feel defeatist for the White Sox. And Grandal, who's had such a good year for the White Sox, he comes up, gets that changeup out over the plate, goes oppo, pumps his fist as he rounds, first. Crowd's going nuts, getting back into it. That was the first postseason extra base hit for the White Sox. The first postseason extra base hit, and it was massive. That was not a double that brought home a run with 2 outs and kind of kept things going. That 2-run homer, putting the runs on the board just like that, boom, that was massive. And wouldn't you know it, things go from there. Garcia clearly was maybe a little bit rattled. Maybe the crowd was finally starting to get for him on the Astros side. And Garcia pitching matchup. And then, of course, you got another Garcia coming in for the Astros. So there's all kinds of Garcias all over the place, tons of Garcias. You had a weird pitching change there, like I'm mentioning the pitching change, a very strange 2-0, a 2-0 count pitching change, where you had, finally, the Astros decided they'd had enough out of their original starter, Luis Garcia, and then they go to the other Garcia, and he gives up the big home run to Garcia. So go figure. We go out to the phone lines now for the first time tonight here, and the phone lines are open. We're rolling along here in our White Sox post-game show. Game 3 here, a big 12-6 win for the White Sox over the Astros, and they keep things going. It'll be Carlos Rodon on the bump tomorrow night. So let's go out to the phone lines here for the first time, and we'll check in with Rob. Rob, what's going on?
Hey, James. Good to hear your voice early this morning, late at night. I'm on the East Coast. I know it's about to change over where you are in Chicago, but what a game. What a game. And what do you think this is like for baseball? Because of the fact that while it was a really, really long game, I thought it was just a lot of theater involved. I mean, the crowd was great.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that for one thing, it's good for baseball when the White Sox are in it because you get some of that Chicago energy. It's a baseball town in its own way. You got a lot of old-time White Sox fans there, families that have handed down that fandom. They're hungry for success. They haven't had as much as they might have liked. They're kind of stinging a little bit still from the fact that the Cubs have been like, the darling for as long as they have. And obviously they finally got their World Series win a couple of years ago. So yeah, I thought the atmosphere was great. The FS1 production crew or whatever, the crowd sounded really good on TV. I thought things were visually very pleasing. And the game was great. It went back and forth. The one thing you have to say is that it did take forever. And I don't know what baseball has to do or what they can do about the problem that they clearly have with pace of play and how long it takes these games and all this kind of thing. I don't know if there's an easy solution. I've yet to really hear it from anybody. I think that, as much as anything, is one of the biggest drawbacks for baseball. And it's not to say that like people are going to get necessarily bored or not like the product or whatever. And of course, there's going to be some people like that. But I mean, even if you like the sport, you don't want to necessarily sit there for hours and hours and hours on end. So you think about football and how tidy those games are. When they start, you basically know when they finish. That's a big selling point for that. So baseball has got its work cut out for itself in that respect. And I don't really know how much of a national baseball fan there is these days. You know what I mean? Like Rob, yourself, maybe notwithstanding, because you obviously check the game out, like you said, on the East Coast. And I don't know if you're just a transplant fan or not, but the national baseball fan, I think, is few and far between. It almost makes me think like they should stop trying to do some of this counter programming stuff. Just go ahead and put the game on during the football games. Who cares? Go back to the afternoon game. Maybe the atmosphere wouldn't be quite as raucous from a crowd perspective, and you get some of that. You lose some of that maybe without having the game later at night. But yeah, I don't know. That's the one thing I'll say is that they do seem to have a problem with just how long these games are. And, that's just not conducive to the modern fan.
And the crowd, because I was listening to another show on your station, Jim Memolo. I was listening to him, and he was going over the fact that the Cubs still rule the town. And while I think that's true, it was nice to see how Guaranteed Rate Field was filled like that. Because Jim was going over, I think I was hearing him talk about the fact that, there's still tickets available for Game 3 tonight. Looked like it was pretty crowded to me. So not to say that he was wrong, because the Cubs still got a thing, but it was just really nice to see that the White Sox fans stepped up here.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think some of that stuff gets to be a little bit overblown. You know what I mean? Like, were what was San Francisco or Oakland or whatever you want to pick, was that ever a Golden State Warriors town? You know what I mean? Like, was there anybody in Oakland or San Francisco, 20 years ago who probably said they were anything other than a Lakers fan? Probably not. You know what I mean? Maybe they'd say, "Oh, I like Glenn Hardaway," or I'm a Latrell Sprewell guy or something like that. But nobody cared about the Warriors. Nobody was a Warriors fan. You have to have extended periods of success in order to be the so-called town's team. And it's really more like, who do the bandwagons root for? Who are the celebrities paying tickets for? Of course, the Cubs right now. And we know that. It's not cool to be a White Sox fan. But, that being said, if they can go on a run here and establish themselves as perennial contenders, now, the Astros thing is kind of a unique and interesting circumstance, because you talk about, how hated they are nationally with the whole trash can thing. And I think you even heard some of those chants tonight. You certainly definitely hear them chanting cheater. I think when Altuve gets up the plate, he gets a lot of that cheater stuff. So
yeah, I'm pretty annoyed by them.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I think there's a lot of people who still find that very annoying and very obnoxious. And, nobody really kind of seemed to pay the price for that. I feel like every time I see Alex Bregman's face up there, I'm like, wow, that guy really just absolutely paid no circumstance or consequence whatsoever. And I have no idea who was or wasn't heavily involved in all that. But, whatever. It's somewhat moot at this point. But yeah, in terms of like who, and I appreciate you checking out that show, Rob. That's one of our newer offerings to our Chicago fan base, where the Jim Memolo, longtime Chicago sports radio guy, and good call. Thanks for the call. We'll catch you next time. Phone lines are open, by the way, 855-908-5668, 855-908-5668. So yeah, look, if you're a Chicago fan, we love you joining us here on The Contender. We hope you'll continue to listen. If you're finding us on the website, or if you're listening to our YouTube feed, check out our app. It's The Contender with a K. The Contender with a K. It's free. It's commercial-free content. And you've got John Zaglul talking plenty of White Sox. You've got Pat the Designer and his Windy City crew talking plenty of White Sox. You've got Dave Schuster, longtime Chicago radio guy, who's providing us content. And like the caller just mentioned, he was here in Memolo here on the air. So we're excited about all the different offerings we've got coming our way. And obviously there's a lot of postseason baseball here to cover. So look, as we said, that big homer, the 3-run shot from Leury Garcia, and Garcia had a massive night. He had a double later, drove in another run. You hate that after Garcia had the 3-run homer, the White Sox allowed the Astros to tie it, but at least they didn't give up the lead. You got out of it tied. You get out of it tied. You're still feeling good with the momentum, 6-6. And then, of course, the White Sox were kind of able to break it open in that 4th inning, where things really got wild. It's interesting thinking back on that inning. It wasn't like the White Sox were hitting buckets all over the place. And they were not hitting screaming liners or finding gappers or all this kind of stuff. They were just placing base hits all inning, just placing base hits. And, where the controversy comes in is where Grandal, obviously you saw the game, hit the ball to first base. The throw comes home. He's kind of veering into and out of the baseline, kind of running on the infield grass. The ball clips his shoulder or his bicep, but the throw home hits Grandal in the arm, basically, and skips away, allowing the runner to score. Right away, Zach Greinke, who had come into the game in relief for the Astros, the first time in his career that he's had a postseason relief appearance, he was right away screaming, out of the baseline. You know what I mean? Like, what is this? Grandal is out of the baseline. To no avail. Tom Hallion getting yelled at by Dusty Baker, the whole thing. You know, I thought Baker was going to get ejected for sure, but it seemed like the umpires were kind of giving him some leeway there. Crazy inning because, again, it was just base hit after base hit after base hit. If you're a White Sox fan, you remember how good that felt. That was just, the absolute most, fired up, because it's not like you're just sitting there with trepidation and waiting, biting your nails down to the nub, waiting for somebody to hit a big hit or put one over the wall in an inning where you get a lot of guys on base. This was just death by 1,000 cuts. I mean, this was the White Sox just getting base hit after base hit after base hit, well-placed hits, slapping it through the infield. And, then in the bottom of the frame, Ryan Tepera comes in and just kind of brings some calm, brings some sanity to the game, because he settled in with a 1-2-3, the first 1-2-3 inning that the game had since the first inning. And then from there, Bummer comes in for the White Sox, the lefty. And, I mean, what a nasty slider this guy has. And he's been having a great year for the White Sox. The TV guys compared him to Andrew Miller, and that's really a great comp. He's got that same kind of sweeping lefty arm, a lot of power, really good slider, high velocity on the fastball. So he's a real weapon for the White Sox. And you loved seeing La Russa give him the second go and just kind of letting him kind of, settle in and take over the game there. Really, again, once you had Kopech kind of, settle down and get through his little hiccups, and he picked up the win, by the way. And you got into the second half of the bullpen there for the White Sox. They basically shut down the Astros lineup. I mean, you look at the final score, 12-6. Yeah, but that was all done in the first half of the game. So you really have to like what you saw out of the back end of the Chicago bullpen today. The two extra base hits that Chicago had in the second inning, third inning, would have been enough. With the 5-run third, you had the 2-run bomb from Grandal. We talked about the 3-run homer to center from Garcia. That would have been enough. But then they go out there, the White Sox do, in the 8th, put on some nice insurance runs. Andrew Vaughn lacing a double, Leury Garcia ripping a double, his 4th RBI of the night. So you really have to feel good about the fact that the White Sox were kind of getting things going offensively, and hopefully they can carry that over to tomorrow. So looking ahead to tomorrow's game, it'll be Carlos Rodon going for the White Sox. I know the Astros earlier had not been, I don't think they had announced who the starter was going to be for tomorrow, but it'll be Rodon for the White Sox. And, that'll be interesting, because he's a guy who, much like Dylan Cease, has been kind of pushed beyond his limit here, maybe a little bit. And even with all the extra rest that Rodon has gotten, he's still, and it'll be Jose Urquidy, by the way, for the Astros. Jose Urquidy pitching for those Astros. He has not appeared yet in the playoffs. He'll be going up against Carlos Rodon, game 3. By the way, that's a 3:37 start tomorrow afternoon for those White Sox. So be sure to check that out in the early afternoon, mid-afternoon, as Carlos Rodon goes to the bump. But, I mean, look, Rodon has been dealing with some arm fatigue and soreness. He threw 132 innings here in 2021, and that's with that extra rest baked in. You just have to say that this is a guy who's been a big part of the year, has a lot of talent, wanted the ball in game 3. They went with Cease. He has pitched well, Rodon, this year against the Astros back in July. 7 innings, 1 hit. He struck out 18 batters in 14 innings against them, held them to an under 100 batting average. But again, it's the shoulder, tenderness that Rodon is dealing with. He's only had a couple of starts going back to a month ago. He has basically been quoted as saying that he wouldn't call it an injury, but Rodon calling it more of fatigue and soreness. So, you have to feel, good about the fact that he's had the extra time off. You have to feel good about the fact that this is a environment where he can really kind of just let it all, empty the tank here, so to speak. This is an opportunity for Rodon to go out there and just pitch on guts, pitch through the shoulder soreness. You know that he's going to have a tough time of it, maybe with the length in tomorrow's game, but that's okay. So tomorrow, 3:30 start for the White Sox. They stay alive. Game 3 win, 12-6. I'm James Flippin. Catch you next time.